illustrious interview with the one and only Jim Marin, to back to just us two lowly plebeians doing our podcasting. Adam Keeler on the, well, this is my 8-string today, not on the classical guitar. I've gotten a metal thing, soundtrack and stuff. And Dr. Tim Mirth on his Easton jazz guitar doing the thing. So, Wood, Air, and Metal, number 17. Today, we're going to be ranting and raving about music life and Grammy Awards and artistic merit and all the wonderful things inspired by this video by Allie Jackson, a drummer, phenomenal drummer, and he shared some pretty potent perspectives. Oh, that's 3 P's in a row there.
That's a lot of P.
That's a lot of P. So pretty potent perspectives on the Grammys and like what gets you ahead in music, what and so on. And he was mainly commenting on Bill Maher's statements about the Grammys and how like the top one. He's like, these are the top 1% and they're the best, so that's why they win the awards and have the most press and have all the trimmings that come with that, the prestige, fame, money, mainly money, marketing, and everything else. And he basically takes a tack of being like, well, it has nothing to do with merit in that regard. It has everything to do with branding and pushing that particular thing forward, which I kind of agree with. And at least in the terms of the top pop music field, it's definitely branding, no doubt about it. Right. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, like at all. It's like, of course, you're going to get your brand out there. That's you. And at that level of success, you know, there's a point where obviously you have to have chops to get your foot in the door to some degree. Like there's no doubt about it. You can't be singing consistently.
And there's a lot of different kind of chops.
Yes, exactly.
Music is just part of the chops. And this is true of even us, right? It's only part of it.
Yep. Absolutely. So you have that to kind of like get you started. And then it's a matter of building your reputation. And how does a reputation get built? Well, you get out there and you start doing work. Like you do it by work, you network, you show up at the gig, you be a professional, you get it, you get your paycheck and you go home and that's it. You know, that's just, it's all a matter of work to build your reputation, which can easily get shot to hell for one bad gig for a bit, you know. But at the same time, if you're dealing, I will say this much, at least in my opinion, you know, you can have one bad gig and everybody that's another musician knows that it's just a bad gig, you know, whatever, you know, 1 out of 30 or even 1 out of 25, 20 gigs that you make a mistake on is like, okay, that's.
Yeah, I mean, also probably not noticed by a non-music audience, exactly. And maybe not even noticed by a music audience. Mm-hmm. And what is noticed though is like wardrobe malfunctions and, you know, and bad stage presence. And nervousness or like tripping over stuff or just kind of boring when they talk on the mic.
Yep.
You know, any of those, like the non things, right? The non-musical things. But I guess, to the point is, and I think what you're trying to say is there's entertainers and it takes some skill to do that. And we like entertainers. They're great. Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess what Allie was trying to get to was, or what he was basically stating was, that's fine. Entertainment's fine. It's when you have personalities that are popular or whatever start to say stuff like, well, this is what's good music because it's good because it's popular. That's why it's good. And it has nothing to do, like we were just talking, like, there's all these other aspects of it that make it something, right? It's the entertainment side of it. It's sort of, in one respect, it's sort of irrelevant in terms of how good the music is. The music is secondary. Like I just said, if you make a musical mistake on a gig, most people won't notice. But if you didn't dress right, they all notice. If you stuttered too much or something when you were talking to the audience, they'd notice. If you didn't make nice enough pamphlets or the stage setup wasn't very good, people notice that. If the way you hold yourself isn't good, people notice that. So, anyway,
Yeah, no, and he's pushing on those points, and I think his like the chief argument starts with the Bill Maher thing, which I like Bill Maher. It's like I don't agree with on everything, but that's just life and so on. But I still like the way that he makes his points. I
Yeah.
don't. In this
Yeah, he's
video,
pretty funny and stuff too, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sure.
And the clips that he showed, Ali showed of Bill Maher's show, Bill Maher was being like, well, pretentious like he always is, and very like that's just his personality. Whatever, I get a kick out of it. But the point that Bill Maher was pushing on is like, oh yeah, well the reason these guys are at the top is because they're good and they're the best, and that's where Ali is pushing back and being like, no,
And I think
not
even use the term like 1%. Like
yeah.
yeah, the 1% at the top are the top because they're the best. They're the most popular because they're good and everyone else sucks, basically.
Yeah, and that was Bill Maher's comment, and Allie's like, nope, nope, you're throwing a lot of people out. And he went through his list of like all these phenomenal artists and musicians, which I would do the same thing. It's like, yeah, that's great, but have you heard of this? You know, the musicians, as that we all, as you get in the musical field, you find your tastes shift, and you tend to respect a lot of people under the radar, a lot more than people that are in popular. And I'm not saying the popular ones suck. It's just a matter of like you understand it more. You understand music more, so you understand the complexities of the things that the guy that isn't being blasted on the radio is doing, or not even
Well, it was
complexity.
yeah, it's musicianship versus entertainment, I guess. You know, I mean, there's plenty of music out there that is just fun to listen to. You know, the subwoofer like breaks your house down. It's so awesome. You know, but like from a musical like analysis standpoint or something, or just even you wouldn't compare that song necessarily. And by the way, there are songs with huge subwoofer stuff that could be compared, but like you wouldn't compare it to like Rite of Spring or something. Or,
Yeah,
it and it's not supposed to be. It was meant to be, you know, popular culture music, or it's more of a folk sort of thing, right? Like, and I mean folk, not like folk instruments, but like part
yeah.
of it's the community sort of sharing of entertainment music, as
It's like the
opposed to
whole
the art side of it, right?
yeah. It's like the whole idea of like McDonald's hamburgers. You
Yeah.
know, it's like why are these things so popular? You eat them and you're like, okay. And I mean, some people like them. I'll have it occasionally. Is whatever. It's fast and it's accessible and it's easy to get to. Those are the three things that the McDonald's has versus Adam Keeler burgers. You know, where it's like I'm in my backyard coming up with it. It takes me a good amount of
Right.
time. I don't market it and everything else. Is my burger better? Oh, absolutely. But if I'm driving on the road, I'm gonna go to McDonald's because I know what I'm gonna get.
Yeah,
Versus,
most people wouldn't argue that McDonald's is better than like a gourmet hamburger or whatever, or that even French fries. Like, there's nothing about McDonald's anything that anyone would consider like high class. But and actually, I just thought of this when you said that, and kind of comparing it to pop music. The reason people like McDonald's is, one, when you're in some random place, it's consistent. You know what you're gonna get. It might not be great, but you know what you're gonna get with it. And it's pretty consistent across the board, no matter, even going to other countries. It
yeah,
practically tastes the same wherever you go. So you sort of know what you're getting. That's sort of what happens with popular music too. There's I'd be actually interested to hear like from people that only listen to pop music if they feel this way, but it's whether they like it because they just know what they're to expect. It's not gonna. They could dip their toes in the water of like fine cuisine, and maybe they'll find something that just blows them away. But they've done that a few times before, where they've ate something that was not for them at all. And the risk of doing that again it's like a risk reward. Like, well, I know there's a chance I'll taste the greatest thing in my entire life, but there's also a chance I'll taste the weirdest, grossest thing that I've ever tasted. And maybe that's the same with music. Maybe say people who gravitate towards pop music think, well, at least I know what I'm getting. Like, I know
yeah,
it's just a Pizza Hut pizza, but like, and I know I could make better pizza, or that so and so has better pizza maybe, but they're more expensive. I know what this is, and it's, it's fine. It gets me through the day, you know.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that's exactly it. There's a difference for like sometimes you just don't want to cook, so you go to McDonald's. It's like screw it. I'm just buying the kids chicken nuggets. I'm getting myself a burger, and I'm calling it a night because I don't want to have the brain power engagement level that it would take to cook everything and do it at home.
Sure,
even though I can do the same thing 100 times better. And I get that with music to a small extent. I honestly, though, like for myself, it's like I just can't turn on pop and have a good time. As well as I could, let me put the caveat on it, as well as I could with like some prog rock or whatever. It's like that's more of a thing that'll hook me in totally. And not that I don't. Well, I mean, I will say that I next to never listen to pop music. Like I can't remember.
Your kids and your wife don't listen to pop music?
No, not at all. Like Julie will, but not that much. And Sam and Ben, Sam's big thing with music is from video games. Like that's his chief thing. And from me playing music all the time, it drives them nuts. In fact, when we took a trip the other weekend, they're like, "Dad, can you like not listen to music on the way up?" It's a 4 hour.
That's pretty much what I get most of the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, my kids listen to pop music and stuff. My wife actually took Riv to see Katy Perry, right before, or like a year and a half ago or so.
Oh, nice.
But that's a cool show to go to. Like
Yeah,
so that was her first concert, and then
Yep.
like the huge screen with like I think it started with like this huge eyeball, like just looking around the stadium or whatever. I'm like, that's pretty awesome. Like to go see something like that. I mean, it's great entertainment. Again, like it's made to be very exciting, and it's well, like extremely well done. So I guess I'm saying all that, but like I hear the pop music all the time, and I was talking to Chris Kuda the other day, great musician from the Cleveland area here, and we were talking about pop music and stuff too, and I was telling him how at some point I think when my wife and my kids and stuff, they're all listening to pop music, like always listen. That's what they listen to, and it's the pop music of today. And one of the attitudes I could have had like sort of early on was like, ugh, like why do we listen to this crap, But I made sort of like a conscious decision to, appreciate it, to say, well, come on, if you're telling me that I can't get anything out of this music, like it's completely worthless, it's not. And then so I started listening to parts like there's some amazing production, and there's also like even just the melodies and stuff that are used. To write a hit pop song, which everyone's like, why don't you just write a hit pop song and you could make millions of dollars and you could just live off of that? There's quite an art to it, right? It's not so easy, and there's a lot of other factors that go into all of it. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is there's plenty as a musician to learn from listening to that music.
I'm right with you on the production end. Absolutely. The more I got into the production end of stuff, the more I realized that is like a super high end. It is an art form in itself in producing. It's unbelievable what you have to keep track of to that regard. And it's that's what kind of gives it that interesting. Like if I do listen to pop, that's automatically where my ears go. Like just like, okay, so they're putting this frequency in this area and this over here, and I see what they're doing with that. Oh, it's a nice verb they got going on this, or man, they're really doing that white noise on that drum, like that snare.
I mean, a lot of it grooves. It does.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
It makes you want to dance. What's wrong with? There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing.
Not at all.
We could pretty much every style of music could use more of that. So
I think that. But just to kind of bring us back to the point that he was pushing against, to call those particular guys or those particular artists as like the top tier musicians, like I wouldn't do that like easily. It'd be like, you're like, yeah, you're good at what you do, but I don't think you're like in the field of a musician's musician, so to speak. And I'm not saying they don't work hard at all, but there's a difference between them and Shostakovich. Like,
sure. What I thought that he said that was really interesting in that video was that Bill Maher's kind of a skeptic, right? He's supposed to be like the intelligent, sort of like see through the cracks. That's sort of his persona.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
here he was sold something. He was sold this thing. It's intentionally made to be. It's the McDonald's, like
Hmm.
we just kind of said, and I mean that in the best way, not the bad
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But he's like basically being sold McDonald's, and McDonald's is saying it's the best. This is the best thing you're ever gonna eat in your entire life. And he's like, "You're right." They say, you're so popular. McDonald's is the most popular restaurant in the world because it's the best. And instead of saying, "Well, you know, it's the most popular because of these things that are real things." So basically, he was duped. You know, Bill Maher was duped and outsmarted by the music industry, so to speak, um, to
Really
just
smart.
by hook, line, and sinker that what they're selling and the images and everything, the whole 9 yards that comes with it, is the best because they said it was.
And that I think that's the first thing, and the alley does touch on that, and that's sort of there. I would bring in the point too. It's like how much music education does Bill Maher have? Like I don't know, but I'm going to assume clearly not a lot because that would
Right.
be a very easy tell with that. And that's the other thing too. It's like I wonder if the quality of pop music and its quote unquote decline in terms of musical variety is directly correlated with the availability of music programs in school. Like the less of an emphasis on musical education because the funding and all the other stuff or
Right.
whatever. And these are clearly huge brushes I'm painting. It's a multifactorial issue. I'm just trying to poke at something. It's so with that going down, the pop music being what it is, it's like, okay, well, if nobody's sitting there and has to do orchestra or learn how to play an instrument, it's pretty easy to get sucked into particular styles of that because it's all that you hear and all that's put out. And there's gatekeepers with it, like,
Yeah.
and so on. It's like what's going to be popular and what's not. And that I think is where Ali is saying like, well, that's where Bill Maher is living in that little headspace of that like popular thing, doesn't know anything musically. So he's sitting in this pop universe being fed the same thing and being like, oh, okay, that's it. Where it would take a little bit of education to be like, oh, well, that's really impressive compared to what I've been listening to here. But
Yeah.
and that's his chief thing. And his other thing is just like, I like that he talked about, he used that one phrase, spectacle culture, which I think is just like, that's a brilliant phrase. It's like, that's what it is. That's why TikTok, with its minute long things, it has such
Yeah.
a draw to it. Vine was a little bit too short with 7 seconds, but the TikTok is great with a minute or so. And, for the times that I had TikTok on my phone, I don't keep it on my phone mainly because of, it's too easy to sit down and go, well, let's just say everybody looked at TikTok when they happen to be relieving themselves. So it's, it's like get up from the toilet and I can't feel my legs. So they got sucked into stupid 1 minute videos 30 times over.
So I've never used it. We got my work basically said you can't use it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a gaping security hole. That's the other reason why I don't. But
I don't use it.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's very easy to get sucked into it because it's entertaining. But he's absolutely right that it's just spectacle culture. Like you're just watching people either make a fool of themselves or allegedly do something special, and whether the two are mutually exclusive in the video or not, those are the things they push towards. And the thing that was amazing to me is as I was watching it, I'm just like most of these are reaction videos to somebody else's thing. So it's like I'm not watching the original video. I'm watching a reaction of the guy reacting to the original video. And this guy's got like millions of followers. It's like, you're not even making something. You're just talking about, and the ultimate meta is we're doing the same damn thing with this other thing. But at least we have a long form video. So we got that going for us.
Yeah,
sure. But regardless of the particular TikTok points with that, the spectacle culture, I think is a very astute observation because it's somebody, I don't know who the saying or who said the saying, but it's like pop music is very bland music done extraordinarily well or entertainingly. Like it's an incredible show when you go to see something. Though, and then the converse is classical music is this incredible music, but the showmanship is like slim to none. if at all. They just kind of sit there and play the instrument, which I think is great personally, but that's me. Like you go to a jazz show, you're not expecting to see a 50-foot billboard high def TV putting a huge eye on the screen and so on, and seeing that's.
No, they
I'm
probably
saying,
had the football game on.
yeah, exactly, exactly. You know,
By the way, don't schedule jazz gigs on Super Bowl Sunday. Just doesn't work out.
nope,
Might have
nope.
been there before.
I had to do a classical gig on like when the Indians were in the pennant or like the World Cup or whatever the baseball thing is. Clearly, I follow sports, right? So the
World Cup where they kick the field goals. Yeah, no,
exactly, and
they struck everybody out. Yeah.
damn it, I can't remember what it was. The World Series, that's it. So the World Series was on. And I had a background music gig at a bar. It was like, yeah, forget it. Like, what the hell?
I know. I definitely had. So Cleveland around here, obviously we have the Cavs and LeBron and everything. And when they would be in the finals, I definitely had gigs on finals night. And I'm actually, the only sport I really kind of follow is Cavs and NBA. But it was kind of like, ain't nobody in Cleveland going to a gig. And you can't plan that out. By the way, you don't even know the schedule of the finals, really. Like, you wouldn't even know, and you certainly wouldn't know if the local team was going to be there or not. So
absolutely. So it's one of those things. So anyway, so to harp on the point of the spectacle culture is that you have this idea when you're going to see a show. If you're going to see a pop show, it should be incredibly entertaining. Like, you're expecting to see a lot of movement, dance routines, television effects, lighting, fireworks, or whatever, all going on with that. And at the price point, it better damn well be.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But that's only true of that 1%, right? That actually has the money to pull that off. Mm-hmm. When you go to local pop gigs, they don't have any of that, really.
No, not at all.
I mean, they try to, you got to kind of have the wardrobe, you have to have the look, you have to have good stage presence. And so those are the things you're sort of like working up. So that 10 years before you get famous or whatever, you're honing your stage chops.
And that's absolutely...
And that should be crucial of every musician, by the way. I don't...
I agree with you on that.
I don't really give a free pass, and I have plenty to work on myself on this too, but... it's no matter what you're playing note wise, if you look like you're not into it, or you have the wrong like energy you're presenting yourself with, it sucks the life out of the music. Yeah. It just does. And maybe that's not fair. Maybe that's like you're listening with your eyes, but you cannot. I mean, I've been a musician forever, and I've been listening to music since I was born, and really listening to it for the last 30 years. Like, and I can go so deep and lose track of time and whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I close my eyes to do that. And yet I still, when I go to a show, I do close my eyes a lot because I can hear better with my eyes closed. But I still notice it. Like the vibe, you can still notice the vibe. It's really hard to not notice when somebody's just has horrible stage presence.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's very quickly apparent when somebody doesn't want to be there or doesn't know what they're doing.
Right.
Like up on stage. And that's something that you have to get your knocks on you.
It takes time. And it takes time. Nobody has the gate out. I mean, you talk, the Beatles, I think, did I send you that picture?
Yeah.
Or something. It's like the Beatles before they hit it, and there was only like 17 people at the gig, and it looked like an empty place. And this was like a year or two before they made it, But they used to have this gig, I guess, I think it was in Germany maybe, where they played like 7 days a week for like 2 years nonstop. You get a lot of chops, and I think they were like 4 to like 6 hour gigs every day. You do that for 7 nights a week for 2 years, you're gonna figure some stuff out. And so they were so polished when they came out. And there's only one way to do that. Is just play lots of gigs. You really can't do it any other way. And even like Katy Perry, we were just talking about, my wife's a big fan, and she's shared like stuff before Katy really got big. She's, great singer.
Mm-hmm.
She was doing all kinds of like just like sleeping on couches, and for 10 years before she hit big, really. She did the whole like touring around, sleeping in vans, and playing any show she could and getting any band she could, take any side gigs she could. Like she did the whole thing, so that by the time she was ready to hit, she probably had 1,000 some gigs.
Absolutely.
You just can't teach that.
Well, that's the other, like, to slight bunny trail. It's like when everybody was like, "Oh, well, Jules slept in her car when she was trying to make it," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, everybody does."
That's right.
Like, it's like I've done it. It's just you just do it. It's because it's like, oh, I could get a hotel and piss away that money, or which I need to put in the gas and for food, and hopefully I'll get more.
Maybe not make it to the next town. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like in that regard, it's like, okay, you don't get like you. Congratulations, you've done what everybody else has done.
But it's still that just shows you what it takes, though. I mean, it does take that, or a lot of times it has, especially prior to American Idol. That was another great comment he had. So
it wasn't
about the American Idol thing. Is he said, "Isn't it funny that American Idol got super famous when it started showing all the bad people?" Like that's when it really took off and became like the most popular show. It wasn't the great talent, so to speak. It was just the spectacle.
Yeah, and it's because he piggybacked that right after he dropped the thing. Boom, spectacle culture. And so that translates both ways, though. It's like we want to see it's that whole like innate thing of we want to see people on the edge of physically impossible tasks, to see them either complete it or to see it go the other way. Either way, it's entertaining because that particular thing is right. Hard. And so if they botch it, it's like, oh, well, it's still entertaining. It's like fail videos are so stinking.
They're so popular, yeah. I never, maybe it's just me, but most of the time, sometimes they catch me and I do laugh. But most fail videos, I'm like, all right, it's not really that funny. Like that. A lot of people love them. I don't know.
Did you watch that one that I sent you of the guy that said he's going to hell because of the song he made? Where it's that little girl with the dog and she's like, "Go!" And the dog goes and like yanks her down and like she hits the ground pretty hard. It's like, ooh, that had to hurt. But the guy's like, and he samples it and it like builds a complete song.
I don't think I saw that one.
Oh, dude, I'll send it to you. It's really freaking funny. It's hysterical. So anyways, again, just harping on the spectacle culture thing. So to bring this around, Bill Maher is making a thing about these people at the top being like the best of the best musician-wise, which clearly is not the case. Like that I could...
But, what he could have easily said is they're the best of the best entertainment-wise.
Yeah.
And he'd be totally on the mark.
Yep. I said that there was this big... back when I was active on Facebook, there was this whole thing about Kanye going around, and I was like, the guy's a great entertainer. Like, absolutely phenomenal entertainer.
Right.
And, like, people got pissed when I dropped that line. And I'm like, listen, he's not Bach. Like, he's not at that. And I just throw Bach out there because Bach's, like, my particular cup of tea. God. But, yeah, no, exactly. I'll admit it. I'll take that. So it's I'm not saying that he's bad at what he does, but it's a different aim to it.
Right.
It's like, and so I don't put them in the same category to the same degree. Like there's music, but Bach did not do the shows that Kanye did. I mean, regardless of the time period or anything else. And Kanye cannot write the same way that Bach did. Right. And that's just, okay, that's fine. I'm not like trying to be offensive when I say that. I'm delegating classes of musicianship in a different way.
Right.
One of them, you take away the spectacle from Kanye, and you go see it, and I wonder how much it would be in terms of engaging. And and seriously, but if you put that same spectacle on Bach, imagine how much more entertaining in a sense.
Maybe. Well, I don't know. Well, I guess it depends what part of the Kanye thing, it's kind of like that superstar quality that he walks into a room. Just walking into the room, that guy exudes a certain thing, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if Bach had that or not. I have no idea. But this guy, like the people want to know what he's thinking, like how he could probably fart and people would be like, man, this is freaking awesome. It is just because some people have, I'm not going to say they're born with it because I think you work for it, but people do have that quality when certain people, when they walk into a room. And so when you say that, it's like, well, even if you took away all that stuff, people would be like, man, Kanye's getting real, like this is great. Like he's sitting there in this crappy bar doing a gig to a CD or whatever, and he's just doing his thing, and people be like, "This is the most amazing, like fresh, raw thing he's ever done." You know, so I don't know that you would lose it because maybe to get to the level he's at, he was able to take a lot of the spectacle things, and obviously, he's kind of like Trump in the way that it's like all press is good press.
Yeah, exactly.
So he learned that, so that helped him rise his like profile or whatever. But I think it would take a long time for him to become irrelevant. You know, even if he lost money or whatever, like it would take quite the effort at this point for him to become irrelevant.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too, is that with the spectacle culture, the pop icons go directly involved with that because they feed into it, and not necessarily in a bad way.
Yeah.
But I think we're kind of maybe veering off of the whole idea of like Bill Maher's comment and this guy's comment on it, and getting it. We're following too many bunny trails. Maybe a little bit. Either way, it's fun. But just to kind of bring it back around, you know, so he was Ali was going after correctly Bill Maher's interpretation of how the music industry worked, and being like, you know, there's all these phenomenal musicians, and it used to be, at least in Ali's argument, that the musicians would vote for the musicians. Like the Grammys were all musicians, and everybody had a particular, because I know somebody that has a Grammy vote, and you know, they're saying that, you know, we just pick the ones that we like, or in their case they pick the ones that they like. Other people, and he brings it like, well, so like soliciting votes or something like that in one sense. And I do like that criticism.
Well, that's exactly how it works now, isn't it? I mean, that you have to petition to the voters, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's like who may or may not be musicians, and ask them, plead with them to put you on the list.
Or maybe not. No, you might be right.
You know, when you send your CD with check, you know.
Yeah.
Like
there's like 50 cents.
Have you considered? Yeah. There's $1. This is what I made. This is what I made on Spotify all year. You should put me up for a Grammy.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I get it. It's so that like the voting thing is kind of annoying. I don't necessarily like that. But again, there's no way to get to that. I mean, that whole
the Grammy Awards is entertainment.
Yes, absolutely. It stops being a musical highlight of like they're a Grammy winner, so it's like, oh, I'm gonna think they're a great musician. It's like, no, I consider them a Grammy winner. Like that.
It's well, going down a rabbit hole, but I just was talking to somebody about this too, like rewarding behavior. Like, should you reward somebody for doing their job? Like, if you do your job, do you deserve a reward for doing your job? Or should you only get a reward when you go beyond whatever your job is, you know? And any kind of like music award shows or music award thing is kind of weird because, well, music's art for one, so how do you even say one thing's better than another or something like that? And so many times, you know, somebody passes away or something, and then they post humorously, posthumously, yes, thank you. Yeah. You know, receive a ton of Grammys, you know, and it's like, well, and they'll be like, because they just put out an album or something, and they're like, hey, look, this was the #1 jazz album, and this is the #1 pop album, and it's like, well, that doesn't seem very authentic. Whether it was a good album or not is sort of irrelevant. It's just saying that there's other factors into how those things happen, because, I mean, how do you even judge it? You know, how would you say this is the best album of the year kind of thing? Like, I don't even know how you would. You might have things you like the most, but even if I like something the most, I can't imagine saying it was the best. So it's already a failed premise, I guess, is my point. And a lot of times it's just people, quote unquote, doing their job. It's sort of like, when you go beyond your job, which, doing something outside of your comfort zone, let's say, maybe that's the time that you should get rewarded. And maybe that's often what happens in some of these, but a lot of times it doesn't seem like that. It seems more like they've been a steady band, always putting out the same record, and we've never given them a Grammy yet, so this is their 10th album, so we're finally gonna do it.
It's maybe not. I mean, some of it, I don't know if it's like necessarily like they're throwing established acts a bone because they've just been in contender for so long, But
I mean, I think you can find proof of that.
Yeah. It's like, but I think that, like, in terms of getting the quality thing, it's one of those things where it's like, the more trained you are, the more you'll recognize it.
You think? I guess so. I'm sorry, I'm being like kind of stubborn on this, I guess.
But no, that's fine.
I kind of feel it's the opposite, which is the more I learn, the more open I am to all of it. So, like, how do I compare Taylor Swift's new album where she did go outside, and she like played all acoustic instruments or whatever and the whole thing, and it brought in like all these other people that she never worked with or something, and then how do I compare that, let's just say album of the year or something, to like the latest Brad Mehldau record, or like, like how would I even, they're not even really the same kind of thing, and each of those things have a lot of value for what they are, and I don't know, I just don't even like, I can respect both of those things. And I might prefer one over the other, but that doesn't mean it's better.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Absolutely. I guess, in one sense with this whole thing is like, I'm so out of the pop music field. Like, I think, did I say this earlier? I probably said earlier, but it's like, I never turn it on. Like, never.
Yeah. Well, by the way, I'm just picking on somebody who's popular. Whether any of the popular, maybe that's the problem too, is the Grammys rewards the popular side of it, right? For being popular. It's like, you sold the most records, so you're the best.
Again, it has to be it's a self-sustaining cycle. It's
and you paid us the most money in your little gift basket.
Exactly. Yeah, and he makes a good point. I like the way that he like did that, the point of like the branding type of thing, because most of the musicians that I listen to, not all, don't have their own line of stuff. It's like
but a lot of them have brands.
Yeah, I was just about to go to that. Yeah. Like, some of them do. Some of them have like their own signature guitar series, or their own.
I don't even like. Let's not even go that far. Like, let's pick on like Haken or something.
Is it Haken?
I don't know. But like, what they're gonna sound like. Their record's gonna sound like effectively. You know what their logo looks like. You know what sort of style of music it's gonna be. You know what the look is.
Mm-hmm.
Like. Same with Tool or something, or Dream Theater or whatever. Like, those are established brands, whether they have signature guitars or a bunch of stuff that they sell or anything like that.
I was aiming at. I was saying that, like, just to clarify, like Taylor Swift selling a new perfume,
right?
Like, the brand in terms of the music is already established. It's kind of like its own unit. But then to take like her name and throw it onto something that has nothing directly to do with an album, and be like Taylor Swift's new dress series. Or,
that reminds me, speaking of Dream Theater, did you see John Petrucci has a new bourbon?
Oh, he does, huh?
I'm not even lying.
And here we go being hypocrites and just give it a shot.
Don't you think a lot of that comes with just a certain level of popularity? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Dream Theater teeters on that line, but they're just enough over the line that John Petrucci's, I mean, as far as guitar players go now, there's not that many more popular than him.
Yeah.
In general. So, yeah, he carries enough weight and probably has enough money to put out a line of bourbon,
like Bumblefoot with his hot sauces.
Yeah.
And see, now the difference is he starting? Here's the question. I'm assuming that Taylor Swift did not go into the sell her own particular thing of perfume. That it because it's not like, ode to Taylor Swift or whatever. It's like this advertised by Taylor Swift. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but do you
But
think that John Petrucci or Bumblefoot made any of that stuff? They didn't do it. They just rebranded it,
yeah, and that's where I was coming.
which
with
is the
that.
same exact thing as the perfume. How is it different?
I'm trying to think of a difference, but I can't. You're winning that one. But like, and Sammy Hagar with Cabo Wabo, he
Right.
did the same thing. But I mean, now granted, here's the difference. Sammy Hagar invested buco bucks into that Cabo Wabo thing to get that tequila brand going, and he sold it for a boatload of cash. It was ridiculous. I think it was almost $1 billion. Is like him reselling it, and he invested like a couple of million in the beginning to get it off the ground.
Yeah.
So like kudos to him for that. And that's where I'm kind of like poking because like, whatever perfume brand X brings in Taylor Swift to help them push it to the next level to an extent is different than John Petrucci going, hey, I want to start a bourbon thing. Here's a couple $1 million to get it going, as my initial investment to bring my
Okay, but is her doing that any different than John doing? Well, there's two. I'm gonna doing like the mess of like being like an endorsee for a different product. So I know I think I know what you're gonna say there, which is, well, he's a musician. He's just pushing gear that he uses.
Yeah.
And I know he has some signature models, but some of those are recent. Like the signature Mesa Boogie thing or whatever. But
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, John Petrucci did do a beard lotion thing.
Yeah.
And I guarantee that he didn't make any of that, or probably didn't invest in it. It's probably just him using his popularity and large beard to be effectively a model, a TV ad spokesman, right? Which, again, I mean, I think it's just a certain level of popularity. Would I do a beard commercial thing? Of course I would. Would I do a bourbon? Of course I would. Would I do a perfume? Sure, why not?
I mean, I would love to do a beard thing, but I don't think I'd ever get called. They're like, dude, you have nothing. And I'll be like, yeah.
I mean, we can make the wood air metal bourbon. I'd be totally about that.
That I would totally, because that's also the ingredients of what goes into a bourbon. You got the metal of the stills.
Yeah, let's get on that. What do we need to get that started?
There we go. And air. Hey, let's go. Let's start a GoFundMe. For the wood, air, and metal bourbon.
Yeah.
Anyways, so with that, yeah, all right. So we're getting down to a point where it's like, so clearly you can use some point of your popularity to push products in order to kind of help feed that and bring other people up with the coattails, push a product, bringing more popularity to enable you to push another product and so on. Allie's particular argument is that has nothing to do with musicianship in terms of making somebody better, which I completely agree with. That's kind of a no-brainer. And then he has the whole thing. It's like, well, if you have copious amounts of skin in videos, it's going to get people's attention.
Right.
And he's kind of complaining about that. And I'm like, I see his point with that, where it shouldn't be a focus on seeing that much skin, but you have to be an absolute idiot to see why, or to not get why.
I mean, movies have been doing it, and TV shows have been doing it, and TV ads, everything does it, right?
I mean, for crying out loud, there's Roman drawings of penises all over the place back in Rome to get like people's attention for a brothel. We know what it is. Duh.
Yeah. Right. We're human. We can't help it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's
before I lose the point, you were talking about the branding thing. He was mentioning how some people, like, one way to get popular right now is to literally say brands in your songs.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? It was like Netflix, Hulu. There's like all these buzzwords, like just like putting it in the music that you actually write, like sort of doing it on purpose, not to make a point. Like, I think we could all get like the Netflix chill or whatever. Like, everybody understands what it is to like binge watch a show, and that could be a fine thing to write a song about. But it's just like saying that's one thing, but to say it in a way that you're hoping that it like catches the Google search engine thing so that more people see it or whatever. Those are kind of like,
I think he was harping on the thing like the product placement thing in the Truman Show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there. I think his thing was saying that these companies approach these particular artists and be like, drop our name and we'll give you X amount of things. Or we'll cover the expenses of the video that you're doing if you drop our name in there.
Right.
Which does happen all the time. Definitely in terms of actual product placement, but not necessarily. I don't know about that in terms of a lyrical thing. Like if I was an artist and they came in and said, like, if you say the name Pepsi in your next single and we'll give you X amount of money, it'd be like, well, Pepsi, 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 Pepsi. What can I rhyme that with? Or what? There is a point where clearly, to say that somebody necessarily sold out that does something like that is garbage. They want to. Everybody's in it to make some money, ideally. So doing that is not a direct compromise of artistic integrity. It still doesn't necessarily mean, though, that artist
the best.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't mean that they're the best. But that's feeding the popular syndrome of I'm popular. XY is for music, so therefore my name carries weight in terms of this perfume, which I can use to sell. That the perfume company approaches me, pays me to do that particular thing, or I take a cut of it, by throwing my name on it, which helps me get more popular, which gets me more money, which helps me brand this. And I mean, these people's operations are corporations of hundreds of people to get their thing going. They're not just like Taylor Swift or Nick, what's her face. Nicki Minaj, or whatever, and that they're sitting there on their phone all day doing it. It's like, nope, they have several business managers getting well paid to continue to do this, and they get well paid, so the other person gets well paid, and so on. That's just part of building it. That's why you see the lawsuits between managers and bands all the time. It's like, well, you cut this deal, but you shafted us, though you made yourself rich using our brand in that regard. Which has happened. Didn't Metallica go through anyways, whatever. But so I still like I agree with Ali's point on all of that. I just don't begrudge the people at the top. I think his chief thing is just like thinking that because they're at the top, monetarily and popular wise equals phenomenal musicianship. Which is just that I completely get his beef, because that's the other thing that kind of ticks me off. Like, just because they happen to be the one that you recognize doesn't mean it's the best in any way, shape, or form.
I think everyone can agree on that, and I think the reason he made the video and was kind of annoyed, and perhaps why we're annoyed, is that Bill Maher in particular is seen as an intelligent, well-spoken, thought-out kind of person, even if you don't agree with him. And even though he shouldn't have a respected opinion about music, because he has such a large platform and he can say stuff like that, people literally, I'm sure, saw that and were like, yeah, he's got a good point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I really shouldn't. I guess I should just listen to the stuff like this because that is the best, and everything else sucks.
Yeah, yep. Which is like, I again, it's one of those things that I would just never turn on. It's like I just couldn't care less. It doesn't do anything for me, but whatever. And that again, I agree with Ali on that one. Absolutely, it's just like, well, this guy's pretty ignorant of how music works. At least we're assuming that much. And Bill Maher hasn't come out and like given a reaction to Ali's video, which I'd love
that we know of.
Yeah, that we know of. I'd love to see that. That would be great if it's like gets to that point where it's like the blowback hits him and he has to respond in his Marian way. That would be very, very entertaining to watch. Speaking of spectacle culture,
I'm just imagining being like, so there's a bunch of musicians whining about me. Maybe they should get a different job because they suck.
Yeah, because they're not the 1%. Yeah. And then you can just
I'm surprised I even heard them because.
And I'll go like, Bill, you're good, but you're not the 1%. Like Dave Chappelle pulls in a hell of a lot more than you do. So whatever. So does that mean he's better than you? Yes, it does. Take that. So anyway, but yeah, and I think that I liked the Ali's video, and I liked the points that he made, and especially when he rambled off all those great musicians. It's like, well, yeah, of course, but I think it's also maybe a little bit unfair because it's an apples to oranges comparison, even though there's the music thing going with it, because it's just different when you have that level of branding and clout. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's just a different thing. It really is. You know, when you get that big, it's not just I'm a musician. That was the catapult, but now you're sitting in the top thing of business to an extent, with music being one of the many avenues that you have going out there.
Oh, sure.
And maybe even the primary one, but it's like merch is a big thing, and all that design stuff, and the stage
Yeah, I
show.
mean that's true. I guess of any band and
Yeah, absolutely.
most musicians that are popular
So
enough, I guess.
I will say, not in the it's not so much in the classical field, if at all. Like I would never buy a Jason Vo T-shirt. You know, well, okay, I won't say never, but they
You
don't offer.
totally would. Don't even lie.
Yeah, I know. I totally. It's like actually, as the words were leaving my mouth, it's like, dude, you totally would. I'm like, yeah. I'd wear it every day.
You're like, why doesn't he have one? Yeah.
Yeah, but exactly that's where my head went. You know, it's like, well, he doesn't have one, so that's why. You know, and in that regard, you know, you don't see like that type of spectacle buying thing in classical. We'll buy the albums, and we might look at the products that they use, but we
I
don't
think it's just a
necessarily.
level of popular. I mean, if Jason View was like, man, I really love these strings, you'd be like, oh, I should try those out. And if he was like, this is the best restaurant in Cleveland, you'd be like, oh, I should try that out.
Well, Lola's. I think that he actually did remark something like that. That's like his favorite place to go is Lola's. And then
Wow.
as for the strings, I mean, it's Michael Simon, so it's going to be good. I think everybody like, yeah, I'd love to go there all the time. But in terms of the strings, like I tried the Galley ones when he was on with Galley strings, and I liked them, except they shredded so fast I stopped using them. Like within a week, the high E string was unwinding, which is crazy for a carbon string. So I was like, forget this. I'm not spending $20 on a set to have it be a week in terms of use.
Yeah.
And then just switched to Augustine.
But see, you did try it though, right?
Well, I tried it before that was his classic.
Oh, okay. Well, but if it was something new, you'd probably try it.
Now he's on Augustine Regals. Like he uses Augustine strings, and I have no desire to try them at all. Like I use their basses on my classical, and I use Hensei tops for the treble strings, and that's like where I'm at.
You eventually will.
No, I will. I don't think I will. I mean, I've heard a couple of really good things about them. Not just like with Jason, I've seen some other people, but the Hensei tops, man, make a guitar scream. Like the comparison, I have not found another string that is that full and punchy for that particular Thames. Like, but with the Barnett guitar, it's a totally different thing. Like the Henseis I have are on it, but they don't sound the same. Like I don't get the same type of response. And that's not the guitar, because when I did have like regular Diodario, they sounded phenomenal on it. So it's like, and maybe that's more of an acoustic instrument thing than an electric instrument thing, but for sure, different strings sound that. When I first got my Thames, I spent like
certainly, yeah.
Trying them out, and I think that's just like, I think in the classical field, you're going to go with what's going to sound good for you on your instrument. And so on. You'll give those guys a shot, but you're not just giving it a shot. Because of their name on it. You're giving it a shot because I'm giving everything a shot right now to see what's going to work. And
well, I mean, there's also a little bit of we're not a fair judge on any of this because we're musicians. Like we have a much different perspective. It doesn't really matter what we think, I guess, in a lot of ways, because we're in the middle of all of it, and we have skewed opinions. It's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Just because a chef says something is the best food in the world, that's like a renowned chef.
Yeah.
It might not be something that you actually like.
That totally. There's totally.
And totally. It might not even be because you're not cultured enough either. Maybe you just really would never like it. And same with music. Like you might say Bach is the greatest, but there's plenty of musicians who don't think so, that have studied and
no, I'm kidding.
But or maybe just find it okay, or whatever. Just never resonated with them or whatever. Great musicians that might feel that way. So it's not like it's set in stone, like somehow, or it's like some comes down from high that there is great music and there's not great music, and great music is a very specific thing or not. Like it's not like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, this goes kind of harkens back to that debate that we had, that what makes music great type of thing.
Yeah.
Like we talked about that in one of our first podcasts, going back and forth about like what sets up like a certain level of what is advanced. That's what it was.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like what's beginning, what's intermediate, and what's advanced. And then maybe that whole argument continues to flow out through the record sales and everything else. Just like what is a beginning thing in terms of like popularity level, what's intermediate, your indie bands that are decently signed and can support themselves with music alone. And then you have your guys with the private jets that have just hit a level of success.
So I guess I was getting the point I kind of lost track of, which was, so what is the Jason View fan who's not a musician like? Would they buy the t-shirt? Would they buy the bourbon? Would they buy the hair gel or whatever? Like, I think they might.
Yeah. I think,
musicians don't count. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like, we don't really count. For one, we don't have any money, but two,
yeah.
It's just like, we like way too many musicians to like really go down to completely investing in one musician, where a lot of people, they're like hardcore whatever band,
the
right?
tattoo guys.
They listen to the same album 75 million times, and those are the people you, as a musician, you love to have, because they'll buy everything you ever do. And so musicians aren't really like that. It's the regular people that are like that do that obsess over one artist.
Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. So the question is how do we get a t-shirt merch table at a classical guitar concert?
You should do one.
just for the hell of it. I think I'm going to try that just to do it,
Yeah, just order like 30 shirts or whatever, and I bet you sell them.
No, it'd be fun.
Like half of them will be like your mom and her friends, but then there'll be, I think you would get, particularly because that's sort of like a gimmick, other classical guitarists be like, this is pretty funny, I should grab one.
Yep. But the joke will get old, and that'll be that.
So I always told we had Brandon Coleman on here, I was like, we need to have jazz battles. We'll be like Akron versus Cincinnati.
Round one. Giant step.
We want fire and like calling each other out and stuff on the stage, and the whole 9 yards.
That would be awesome. I think that would actually work. I think that would definitely work.
I mean, here's my pitch on jazz is like, man, I'm gonna just talk about Americans. We love things like sports and stuff, right? Where there's no like, the outcome is not known. Anything could happen. We really like violent sports where somebody could get hurt and things could crash and burn. The whole event could get canceled or whatever. Yeah. So it's like, we love all these, like, and we love uncertainty. We love TV shows where we can't figure out the ending until the ending. All these kind of things. And it's like, that's jazz.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like go to, like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, we're playing with fire on stage. There's improvisation. It could be a good night, bad night. Is Tim gonna hang on to this one or not? Like, is the amp gonna stay on? Is it gonna fire? Like, there's all these like little like, that's why I love it too. It's like, it's a very like human thing, where there's great nights and good nights and bad nights, and it's a mix of all these different things, and it might be good moment or bad moments, and you never know what you're quite gonna get, but there's that chance that you're going to get the Hail Mary at the end of the game that somebody catches or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the same deal with a jazz gig. You just could happen to see like the greatest, moment of music in your life. And that can happen at any jazz gig. So I don't know why it's not more popular. Like, I feel like that's like, there's a problem with jazz marketing. It tried to like scholasticize it instead of humanize it or something.
Oh, I
And
think it's the same thing that could be said with classical music.
oh, certainly, yeah,
It's the same thing. It's like you have the quote unquote higher end or higher art forms, as they've been known to be called, and the marketing and presentation sucks. To an extent, like comparative to like I guarantee you that like even if they were a super popular jazz guy, Katy Perry's stage show is going to be immensely bigger than them,
yeah.
and but that's also like at the
Well,
same
but
time.
she's also there's not many musicians who make more money and can generate as much
But
money as her.
that's where I'm kind of headed with my point is that well, kind of her performing in the midst of that organized chaos of showmanship is a lot easier than trying to handle the lines that Pat Metheny can do with a trio. Like in terms of the complexity, it's like one vocal line versus what he's doing. It's not even on the same planet. And I'm not saying Katy Perry's necessarily unskilled or anything like that, and remotely, but in terms of the level of skill that's needed to pull off one of the two, like Metheny's.
Well, at least on the music side of things, no way Metheny could dance like that.
No, and nobody would want to see that. So if you ever listen to this, Pat, I'd see it if you did it.
Did you ever? Did you ever see that picture of Pat like from some gig in Miami where he's wearing like a Speedo? And that's it.
No,
That's the only thing he's wearing.
That's amazing. I'd be concerned about getting my guitar like sweaty.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is Miami, so it's probably really, really.
I think it was Miami. I'm assuming. I think that's where. Yeah, I think that's where it was.
If you really wanted to show off, you should do it in Iceland. An outdoor gig. Nothing but
like even in those, even the high art music, right? There's still young testosterone or whatever going around when you're in your 20s. Totally. So maybe we got to show more. That's how Pat got popular. Show some skin.
Which, take that, Allie. Now, what are you going to do? What now? Your whole argument falls apart. You forget the Pat. I'll see your point, but I'll raise you.
Pat's an interesting case because he kind of, I don't want to say it was pop music, but there was a sort of style of pop music that the Pat Metheny group did. That had its day in the sun. It's almost like the equivalent of like instrumental pop music. So there's a reason he's as popular he is, and it's not because of the jazz trio stuff. Like that's. In fact, I remember seeing an article with him. Like the Pat Metheny group can play big stadiums, or they could. Lyle Mays passed away a year or two ago, which was the other main member of that group. So I don't think they're doing anything. They're probably done. I actually don't totally know. It's not my favorite thing either. But anyway, he was talking about how he took his trio out. The first time he did the trio in like the early 2000s, he had Larry Grenadier and Bill Stewart, who were big enough names in jazz that he could book these gigs. But then a couple years later, he did another trio tour, and he had a young Christian McBride, who's now a huge name in jazz, but at the time nobody knew who he was, and Antonio Sanchez, who no one knew who he was, but is also now a huge name. And he's like, I couldn't book anywhere. He was Pat Metheny, and like no places wanted to book him because the other two names weren't big enough. So it's not the trio stuff, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not his jazz playing, like, let's say real jazz playing that got him popular. I'll probably get some hate mail for that, but
there's no such thing as bad press. Let's get some people angry. So
send your hate mail to Adam K.
at gmail.com. What are you doing to me? Oh man,
I live in Wadsworth.
I think give the address. Here's my Google Maps longitude and latitude. Right.
That's where I live, not where Adam lives. Yeah.
That's exactly it. So now we should end this thing now, so I can board up my windows. So.
Rabid Pat Metheny fans. I don't know, they're probably all like 87 years old, so you're probably not much to worry about. Though they might still have some grenades from back in the old war days.
Yeah, exactly. They've been storing them
They've just
just
been waiting for somebody to shit on Pat Metheny.
sitting there. I've been waiting my whole life. I've kept this grenade in this box, just waiting. And I live in Rochester, Ohio. I'm hunting this guy down. That's it.
By the way,
Uh,
we adore Pat Metheny. He's
yeah.
just like a mind-bogglingly amazing musician, and man, amazing, just amazing.
Yeah,
I
he
think
is.
well, I was sending Adam some Pat. We're gonna end this on a good note. I was sending Adam some Pat Metheny stuff the other day, and I don't think he had heard some of it. Like there's a masterclass thing that I sent you or
Yeah,
whatever.
the rhythm.
And then there was
That,
something I sent you where he was just like warming up for a second. And
yep,
it's really cool to just listen to him to warm up, even like just
yep.
he's amazing. But like, you know, he was just warming up. So there's a little like sloppiness or whatever he's going through it. And Adam was like, I'm just glad that he did that because then I was like, because I was starting to get really like inferior complex because everything he was playing was like so perfect.
It's like,
It
oh
was
my
nice to
God.
hear him like flub a little, like a couple notes at least. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus.
Out of 4,000 missing 2 makes me feel better.
All right.
See the
He's
humanity.
human. See? Yeah, he missed.
There it is.
He's like,
Take that, lizard
it's
people.
7 in the morning. And he's in Colombia or something, and
Yeah, jet lag.
jet lag, and he made a few mistakes. And it wasn't even like mistakes. They're just like, you know, he's just kind of warming up, so he was just sort of messing around.
Speedo's too tight. You know, all these things are against him, and he misses like 2 notes. And that's
Man,
it.
we're really, yeah, we're.
We're
If
digging-
you've made it this long in the podcast, send us some Pat Metheny hate mail.
Someday we'll drag him on here, but we'll say that you have to be wearing a Speedo.
I should make that the. What are they called?
The
little
thumbnail?
the little icon thing or whatever for
Yeah.
the video. Yeah.
The thumbnail.
The thumbnail, yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
I've only said it like 3 times. Come on.
I couldn't hear you. It's the internet.
Oh man, that would be that.
Note to self, Tim, remember to rewind and blur that sound on the recording.
Yeah, exactly. So that you can get away with it. See, I totally didn't hear him.
All right, okay, final thoughts.
All right. So, final thoughts on the alley. I agree with most of what the guy had to say, but I'm not as harsh against the people sitting at the top. Like, I think that his beef was more with Bill Maher than the people that were actually being talked about. And that I agree with. It's like, yeah, absolutely. I think that the perception is annoying because not necessarily the musician makes it to the top of the fame thing, but in general, I don't begrudge somebody that success with, because you don't, regardless of your musicianship skill, you have to have some to make it that far. Number one. Number two, the amount of drive that it takes to get to that spot is just, it's huge. So you can easily respect that. And that much I do. I might not listen to him, but clearly that amount of work totally pays off. That's my take.
Sure. Yeah, it reminds me, I had a boss once, and he was talking about his sister who had a PhD in music, his composition. I think she taught at some college. I'm not sure where. But they went to go see her recital. This is, she was already a professor or something. So this wasn't like a bachelor's degree recital or something like. So it's probably pretty high quality, whatever. Yeah. So the family went to go see it. His PhD. I mean, like, she's dedicated her life to music, and he said, yeah, him and his family all looked at each other and are like, yeah, she went off the deep end. Yeah. And I actually said to him, I'm like, have you really thought about that conversation? Like, what do you know about music? Like, I was kind of being defensive, but I'm like, what do you're not a musician. Like, what do you know about it? So your sister, who's dedicated her life to music, you're not going to take her opinion on it? Like, you're not going to, like, she's your family, she's your blood.
Yeah.
Yet you're going to say she went off the deep end? Like you don't see where there's a problem there? Like, what, whatever you're an expert in, wouldn't you expect people to say, well, I should probably get an expert to tell me what this is about? And I think to Ali's point is he was saying, well, what do you do? Like, well, you don't take your opinions about music and art from people like Bill Maher.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
don't. You should be. How do you? Well, so where do you get it? Well, you probably want to get it with the experts in the
Yeah.
field, and that's the same thing you would do with anything else. But for some reason, in art and entertainment, we treat it way different.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. That we do. Well,
and
I
so
mean,
that's an unfortunate thing. Yeah.
yep, I have that conversation with my mom all the time because she'll listen, hear what I'm listening to. She's like, I just don't get it. I'm like, well, that you're right. You don't get it. I'm not trying to be elitist, but you don't understand what's going on with that. In some regard with it, it's just like, yeah, it's minimalist, but there's a lot of reasons why this is good that it take a, and I'm going to sound totally pompous, but it would take a long time to explain. Like not that she wouldn't get it, but it's like, how do I sum up this point in time when this song came out and the pushback against everything else, what it's doing musically to push back against the current trends and why it broke through and like all these things.
Yeah.
It's like, 10 years of schooling, thrown back and be like, how do I sum up why I'm right and you're wrong?
Well, I mean, I think the food stuff's is an interesting thing. It's like people don't like. I think a lot of people who like whiskey, they didn't like it at first, and then you kind of like grow to like it, and then once you get a certain taste for it and you sort of start to understand it, then you can appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then you can have many different ones, and you can taste the subtle differences. Where the novice, like they try bourbon, you could give them the greatest Johnny Walker Blue, whatever, like thing or something, and they're gonna say this tastes like garbage. Like they're not ready for it, or they wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that and like Jim Beam or something. Like
Yeah,
it would
exactly.
taste the same to them, and it would probably not taste good.
Yep.
And we all kind of went through that, right? Like it didn't just like magically happen. You sort of have to work your way into some of these things. I mean,
Yeah.
same with like IPAs and whatever. Most people hate them as soon as they taste them. It's so like hit you in the face. But once you get a taste for it, you kind of figure it out a little bit. You grow accustomed to it more, and then you could start. Eventually, you're like eating super bitter chocolate or something. Like it's all these little like the food thing works really well, or stinky
Yep.
cheeses and things like that. So you have to sort of acquire the taste for it. I think it lands the same way with music. And you'd like to think, well, if Gordon Ramsay tells me that this bourbon is the greatest thing ever or something, or that while I might not be ready for it, I would at least think that he's probably right.
Yeah.
But we don't
Yep.
do that with music for some reason. So
Yep. We definitely don't do that with music. We should to an extent, but that happens. Maybe it's more of like I don't know. We can save that conversation for but it's just an interesting thing of that when we get to the non-objectively quantifiable fields, we think that every opinion works with that.
yeah.
And that's just not the way. Well, I mean, you can look at it with everything with social media. Everybody's got an opinion that they think they're right on it. It's like, not so much. I mean, you can air your opinion. That's fine, but you're definitely wrong on some stuff. That's just the way that it is. And that's, I don't mind being wrong on anything because for me, that's a chance to learn. But to counterpoint that doesn't mean that I'm going to go down with just being like, okay, I'm going to take it at that. I'm going to push back hard because I want to be right in that regard. Not that I have to have my point proven, but I got to make sure that the point that I'm being quote unquote converted to is solid enough where I feel comfortable moving over there. Because if I can continually poke holes, it's like, well, it's not convinced yet. And not convinced yet in a stupid, like, well, that doesn't convince me, period. It's like, well, no, there's evidence that will definitely push me over the edge with things. That's just the way that it is. Anyways, so yeah. Otherwise, I think that's pretty good. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're wondering why the hell there is a picture of Pat Metheny in a Speedo for the thumbnail, you have to listen pretty far. You got to commit to this. And if you have, leave us a like or a thumbs up just so we know how many people made it to the end and got the Pat Metheny reference joke there. That would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
The rabbit trail on that one.
All right, let's wrap this up. Peace out, everyone.